Today we encounter a truth of our Catholic faith that dates all the way back to the first century. That actually is an established truth of the very incarnation of the Son of God in Jesus Christ, who assumed our human condition. And the truth is, and the Church takes this very seriously, the truth is that human beings are a composite unity of soul and body. The Church takes this absolutely seriously. We are a composite unity of soul and body. We are not simply a soul. And this is so true for the Church that, in fact, she defines death as the separation of soul and body. And the empirical evidence of what that means can be gained by simply meditating upon a corpse. What is a corpse? A corpse is a human body that has been separated from a soul. There's no animating energy there, it's just a corpse. And that is, by definition, according to the Church, what death is, the separation of soul and body. There is the final death where the body goes to the earth and decomposes. And that experience, God never intended us to suffer that. If you go back to the book of Genesis, he was trying to help us avoid that experience by saying, don't eat from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Stick with the trees of good. Just eat all the good you want, but stay away from this one tree that is the knowledge of not only good, but also good and evil. Because as soon as you eat that tree, you'll die. And we ate of that tree, and now we die. And Jesus, again, with this truth of our faith, taking this composite unity of soul and body so seriously, God in his wisdom is conscious of this truth. Because he says, trust, you have faith in God, put faith in me as well, because I'm going to provide a dwelling place for you, temporary, when your native dwelling place goes to the earth and decomposes. Because death is a reality for us now. And Jesus says, I'm going to the heavens, I'm going to prepare a place for you, a dwelling place for you that will be the place where your soul can at least dwell until I can give your native habitat back to you, which is the human body, at the resurrection on the last day. The human body is the native dwelling place of the soul. The Church absolutely takes this seriously. The human body is the native habitat for the soul. And Jesus is saying here, in anticipation of you losing your native habitat, trust me, I've gone ahead of you, and in my Father's house there are many dwelling places, and I've got one picked out just for you, so that when your soul separates from your body in death, I'm going to give you that dwelling place as a temporary holding place for you until I give your body back to you in the resurrection on the last day. See, that's how profound a truth this is, this composite unity of soul and body. God has thought about this all in advance and has prepared for it so that when we die, we have a place we can go because we have lost our native habitat, which is in the human body. Now, there have been heresies down through the centuries that have taught that the true essence of the human being is the soul. Forget about the body. In fact, there's no real unity between the soul and body. One of these happens to be just all over our culture today. It's a heresy that goes back to the 2nd century of the Catholic Church called Gnosticism. It doesn't really believe matter and spirit come into unity. The spirit is like the rider of a horse. It just rides the body and beats it into submission, and the body is secondary, non-essential to the soul. What matters is the soul. And the Church has always fought these heresies, especially Gnosticism. But Gnosticism today has come back in spades because we today, as human beings in our culture, are treating ourselves as though I can do anything to the body and it doesn't affect my soul. I can do just about anything to the body and it doesn't affect my soul. Well, see, that's only possible if there's a separation and a divide between soul and body. But again, the Church takes absolutely seriously that as human beings, we are a composite unity of soul and body. As I treat the body, I'm leaving imprints and impressions upon the soul. How I live in the body affects my spiritual soul and forms it, because we're a composite unity as human beings, soul and body. Men and women of integrity, integration of soul and body, as opposed to the disintegration of soul and body, which by definition is death. And Hollywood has come up with a category for human beings who are suffering the separation of soul and body while still breathing with their lungs and beating with their hearts. They call them zombies. Zombies, the living dead. So let me just make this a little more concrete. Can I contracept the human body and have that in no way affect my soul? The Church says, no. You can't render the body sterile without also rendering the human spirit sterile. Why? Because we're a composite unity of soul and body. As I treat the body, so it affects the soul. And my love is no longer life-giving if what I'm going to do is sterilize the body. Can the physical union between a man and a man, which physically, materially is sterile, be life-giving at a spiritual level? Only if there's a separation of soul and body in that activity. Can I have sterile physical activity and richly spiritual, fecund and generative spiritual fruits at the spiritual level? Only if there's a separation of soul and body there. Is that view possible? But again, the Church takes very seriously. We are a composite unity of soul and body. As I treat the body, it affects the soul. And the transgender is another example of this. Can we treat the body as though it contributes nothing to my identity? If my soul is communicating to me the consciousness that I, as a biological male, am actually a female, then I must mount the rider, like a rider of a horse, I must mount the human body and slam it into submission and make it into a female to adjust to my soul, as though the body has nothing to contribute to my substantial identity that is worth anything. Well, that's only possible if there's a division between soul and body. And again, the Church takes very seriously the understanding that the human being is a composite union of soul and body. So much so that When I receive the Holy Eucharist at this altar, spiritual life from Christ and his divinity is not only communicated to my soul, but by communicating with my soul, that divine life is going to my body even as a promise that on the last day I'm giving you a pledge of future glory even in your body. Why? Because of the composite unity of soul and body in us. That divine life you're receiving in the Eucharist this morning is being communicated to the human body as a promise. You will rise to glory with me in virtue of the unity of soul and body in the human being. This is not purely spiritual. We're not doing something purely spiritual here. This is body, blood, soul, and divinity, uniting with our body, blood, soul, and human spirit with a pledge. I will raise you up. And again, in this interim, yes, we will lose our native habitat, our native dwelling place, which is the human body. We will lose that. I mean, moving is a traumatic experience for a lot of people. I moved here in September. It's not always comfortable to have to move. We'll talk about changing residence. When we die, that's a difficult time. I mean, you're talking about changing addresses from the native habitat of the human soul, which is your human body, which God has given you, to where Jesus has said, you have faith in God, put faith in me as well. I've got a place for you. It's temporary in the heavens. You were not made to have a dwelling place in the heavens per se as your native habitat. No, your native habitat is the body. But here's a dwelling place. You can dwell here until I give your body back to you glorified. And I will do that. And he promises that he will do that every time we come to this Eucharist. So again, we're not simply doing something spiritual here, as though we're angels. We come forward as human beings who are composite unities of soul and body, divine life communicated through my soul, and in virtue of the union of soul and body, promised to my body as well, that I will raise you up on the last day. I promise you. Trust me, in the interim, I will also give you a dwelling place that will be temporary until I give you back your native habitat, which is the human body, and you will dwell with me in glory for all eternity.